Our fantasy football marathon here as the teams have been drafted so far. With ESPN Fantasy Football, that number will rise steadily and quickly. Sign up now, get ready for the season. Download the ESPN Fantasy app or go to ESPN.com/FFL. And whenever you have fantasy questions, the man with the answers is the one and only Field Yates. But let's see if he has the answer to this question from Sneaky Hembo. Here we go, Yates. Using PPR scoring, which player has the record for most fantasy points as a rookie?
All right, Greeny, the PPR scoring, I think, was a way to try to throw me off. I'm going to go with Cam Newton because he had an unbelievable rookie season, but there's probably a running back or wide receiver who surpassed him somewhere along the way.
Cam Newton is third, so it's an excellent guess. Eric Dickerson is second. At the top of the list is Saquon Barkley.
Wow.
In 2018, Saquon Barkley, the best rookie season in fantasy, and then the best individual season in the NFL last year. All right, Yates, let's jump into it here as we do fantasy focus. We've got a Matthew Stafford injury situation. He's got a back, and he's 37. We don't know just how much of a problem that could turn into. So with that thought in mind, how wary should people be about drafting Davante Adams?
Yeah, Greeny, I'm not to the point where I am bypassing Davante Adams entirely at all. Like, as a matter of fact, I'm still a couple of weeks away from getting to that point. What I will say is that if you're on the clock right now, and you have the opportunity to take a Davante Adams, maybe as opposed to a Ladd McConkey, perhaps you lean towards the other Los Angeles wide receiver with just a touch of uncertainty surrounding Stafford's back at this moment.
Okay, let's go then to Washington. We got the flip side. We got a receiver with an issue. That's Terry McLaurin. He may miss time. How should that impact and how should we view it as far as his quarterback, Jayden Daniels?
Yeah, hardly at all, truthfully, Greeny. This guy is just an unbelievable player who this past season had one of the greatest rookie years. Apparently not as good as Saquon or Eric Dickerson or also Cam Newton, but I am totally in on Jayden Daniels with or without Terry McLaurin as a top 4 quarterback. He's currently in my quarterback 2. I think this Terry deal does get done.
And then finally, we mentioned Saquon. Is he RB1 in your fantasy roster?
I've got Bijan Robinson, but it's not because of anything that Saquon Barkley has done himself. It's simply this: 61 catches last year for Bijan versus 33 for Saquon. If you're playing in PPR scoring, the possibility for 70 catches is in play for Bijan. It is not there for Saquon. By the way, Bijan had more rushing touchdowns than Saquon Barkley last season. Jalen Hurts and the tush-push being around still impacts Saquon's overall fantasy value.
Absolutely. So it's not just the yards, but it's the scores. Now, I want to pivot to something a little different. Let's go back to the quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes has not been the number 1 fantasy QB since 2022. To regain that title, he will need to be protected. So I want you to hear him explaining why their first-round rookie tackle, Josh Simmons, is the man to do just that.
I think it's just you hear the defensive guys talk about him, and they all are saying the right things when you want a guy that's going to go out there and contribute. And so the sky is the limit. I mean, he has a chance to be one of the best there is at that left tackle position, but he's got to go out there and prove that in the regular season.
All right, so people are raving about this rebuilt offensive line, and yet Field Yates, you have Patrick Mahomes ranked as QB9 behind players like Brock Purdy and Bo Nix and Baker Mayfield. So let's live in a world, Field, where that offensive line does look a lot better. And Josh Simmons, who you and I and Mel spent so much time talking about leading up to the draft last year. What would that mean for Patrick Mahomes and his fantasy value?
First of all, Greeny, I want to make sure that everybody who's out there watching right now sees that logo on the bottom left portion of the screen. It says ESPN Fantasy Football. We're not talking real life people, so stop bothering me on Twitter and my mentions about how I don't think Patrick Mahomes is the greatest. He's the best player on the planet. Back-to-back seasons, Greeny, Patrick Mahomes has exactly 4 games with 20 or more fantasy points. Lamar Jackson last year, just for a reference point, had 14 in 1 year, right? So we're talking about a totally different stratosphere because he's not a running quarterback in the way that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts and Jayden Daniels are. And guys who I have ranked ahead of him include the likes of Bo Nix, who, by the way, had 98 rushing attempts last season. Kyler Murray, who's right there in the same territory as Patrick Mahomes, has more rushing upside. Now, not nearly the same passing upside for Patrick Mahomes, but the reality for this Chiefs team is that while they should be better on offense last year and they should protect Patrick Mahomes better, there are going to be weeks where the Chiefs say, we're going to win this game the way that we feel like we need to. Play great defense, ground control and ball control on offense. They've done that for the past 2 seasons. Mahomes has a better profile than the past couple of years, but the days of him being considered in the same breath as Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jayden Daniels going into the season, to me, at least for now, we're on hold.
From a fantasy perspective, again, I'll underline that for you one more time. Jeff, I do want to mention, for those who don't know, Josh Simmons is a player, had he not gotten hurt and missed most of the year last year for Ohio State, he would have been in the conversation to be the first offensive lineman taken in last year's draft. So if he is that good, Jeff, what does that mean for this Kansas City offense?
Oh, Super Bowl. I mean, you think about Patrick Mahomes and the years that his offensive line has struggled, they've still gotten there but haven't won it, right? So now if your left tackle, your blind side can keep you free, you remember how many times he had to move out or he was getting bumped when he threw it last year? This team understands, and Fields said it best, they have a style of winning. They're not worried about all the numbers. They want to find ways to win. Patrick Mahomes is as good as anybody doing that. If he's protected, AFC, they're going to make another run. I mean, they're going to have to beat some good teams, but you got to put them up there with that blind side being protected.
Quickly, Marcus, do you expect this KC offense, which really, I mean, they were 15-1 in games they tried to win last year, and yet they did that with an offense that really struggled. Do you expect their offense to be much better?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Phil that it won't be Pat Mahomes, but I think this will be a 30-point-a-game team once again. Think about it. You got Brown, who was injured last year. Xavier Worthy came on the scene. Rishi Rice will be back this year. We talk about Travis Kelce not being the same, but Travis Kelce still impacts the game, and you have to respect him. The protection is all that matters for Patrick Mahomes. Yep. We've seen this team be explosive offensively. We've seen them have to manage games, but they've done it in the way of winning, so we haven't made a big point of emphasis on how explosive the production has been. I think they get back to some of that explosive production, those outings where we see 350 yards passing, 400 yards potentially with a lot of touchdowns in there, because the personnel is better on the outside as long as everybody can stay healthy.
All right, we'll see if they do that. And again, we'll see what that means for Mahomes from a fantasy standpoint and much more. Yates, outstanding. Thank you. Good luck as you continue the fantasy marathon. Meanwhile, as you know, the college football season is right around the corner. I know that because yesterday the AP released its preseason top 25. And in the second closest margin ever for the number 1 position, Texas is at the top for the first time in school history, just 5 votes ahead of Penn State, which slides in at number 2. So that brings us to today's green list. These are the top 5 college football games this season that you should circle on your calendar right now. And you will not have to wait long for the first one. The opener is Texas and Ohio State. So you have 2 of the top 3 teams in the country. You've got Arch Manning's first season as the entrenched starter there. You have Texas ranked number 1, but an underdog in its first game to Ohio State, which of course is defending its national title. Next, you have Alabama, Georgia, which obviously always means everything. Paul Feinbaum told us earlier this morning Alabama is underranked at number 8. Remember, Alabama was up 28-0 when these teams met last year, hung on to win 41-34. Kirby Smart is just 1-6 against Alabama. Number 3, the game, as always, Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan has won 4 straight meetings. You know, that doesn't sit well in Columbus, even as the defending national champs. Ryan Day is 47-1 against all other Big Ten teams. Is this the year that he finally beats the Maize and Blue? Number 4, Oregon and Penn State. Penn State, number 2, and you heard me say they're almost at number 1. This is a rematch of last year's Big Ten championship game. It will be Penn State's annual whiteout game. This could be a Big Ten title game elimination match, and it comes fairly early in the season. And then finally, the 5th game, LSU and Clemson will feature, among other things, Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik, who figure right now maybe to be the first 2 picks in next year's draft. Brian Kelly is 0-3 in season openers at LSU. A lot of pressure on him to finally get that win. So that is my list, and I am sticking to it. And I want to stick with that game and that theme for something I'll call Ask the Alumni. Both Marcus and Jeff have fascinating stories from their universities to tell here this morning. So, Marcus, let me ask you, does it feel like it is make the playoff or bust, CFP or bust for Brian Kelly this season in Baton Rouge?